So if you're a marketer, let me ask, how confident are you that your content actually connects in every market? If you're guessing, it might be time to check out Phrase. Phrase is the industry-leading AI localization platform that helps you deliver content in multiple languages without losing your tone, your message, or your mind. It automates the manual work, slashes review time, and gives you real data on what's working where. Brands like Uber and Zendesk trust Phrase to scale their content across the globe and get it right every time. If you're serious about reaching more people and driving better results internationally, head over to phrase.com/MPN and take a look. That's phrase.com/MPN.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Coming up on this episode of the Entrepreneurial You.
I would say the number one mistake founders make, especially if they're first-time founders, is building anything at all or too much of something before validating their concept. Every technology is just a tool that humans use to evolve. AI is just yet another tool for humans to use to evolve.
Hey, it's John Lee Dumas of EO Fire, and it's the Entrepreneurial You, the show for dedicated and passionate Caribbean entrepreneurs seeking daily inspiration, brought to you by author, speaker, and award-winning entrepreneur Heneka Watkis-Porter. You must be prepared to ignite.
I'm always so excited when I get to sit down in my chair and there's a guest across from me and we're having a conversation. And this week is another week that we get to do that. I'm your host, Heneka Watkis-Porter. And this is the Entrepreneurial You podcast. Now, today we are going to be just going in head deep a little bit into the world of tech startup, innovation, and entrepreneurship. And I have a lovely guest. He is Jason Sherman, a successful innovator, award-winning filmmaker, published author, and tech startup expert. Jason is the CEO and co-founder of Vengo AI and Spinner, and has been featured in major media outlets like the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and The Verge. He's also the author of Strap on Your Boots and hosts a podcast of the same name. So yeah, we're podcasters alike, yay, where he shares practical advice for entrepreneurs. If you ever dreamed of starting a tech company, or you're actually in one right now at the beginning but felt overwhelmed by the process, or if you're simply just curious about how AI is reshaping industries, then you're at the right place at the right time. So welcome, Jason. Welcome, Jason Sherman.
Thank you, Heneka. It's a pleasure to be here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. How to bootstrap a tech startup in the AI era is what we're going to be talking about to our peak performers today. And we know that starting a tech company can feel like climbing Mount Everest, yeah? Especially if you're bootstrap without venture capital. And Jason's journey is going to prove to us that creativity, resourcefulness, and storytelling are keys to building a successful startup. So as we explore the strategy or his strategies for launching a business on a budget, wow, yes, we all know that, yeah? Leveraging AI ethically and using storytelling to stand out in a competitive marketplace. If you've ever wondered about that, then wonder no more. I have an icebreaker question for you, Jason.
Shoot.
As both a filmmaker and a tech entrepreneur, what's one storytelling principle that every startup founder should know?
It's a good question because filmmaking and startups and technology are actually very dissimilar. They don't have a lot in common because one is really telling a story for an audience to see and believe, and the other is really solving a problem. But where storytelling comes in some ways, is solving a problem does happen in the film world too, especially if you're making a documentary. So I would say connecting to the community that is interested in your story, whether it's a movie or a product, is really the biggest part that really connects, is finding that base of people that really are targeted by the story. So if you're making a movie about superheroes, well, then you're going to be targeting superhero fans. If you're targeting people for your e-commerce store, then it's people who are looking to buy the products that you're selling. How do you tell a story that connects the dots for those? And the best way is to learn about the community behind the product or the service. That's really the best way to really, I think, to connect those two.
Awesome. All right, so let's talk about connecting the dots with our audience, how you actually got started as an entrepreneur, both, in tech and filmmaking. They're both telling stories in different ways, but like chalk and cheese when you look at them in comparison. Tell us your journey.
My journey goes back many decades. I started out very young, programming as a kid, selling products in school to other classmates, and just trying different ideas and starting different businesses. I realized really early in my life that I loved to create things out of nothing. That was just something that was always on my mind. Like, what can I create that I can then either sell or leverage or use in a way to either A, make a living, or B, help society, or both? So I was doing that for decades, helping other people build their dreams with different consulting businesses or development businesses, and helping people build their platforms or their products or their books, helping them ghostwrite or whatnot. I've done a lot of that. And eventually just saying, I really got to do it for myself, and I was doing it along the lines. I was kind of every like 5 years or so, it was like 10 projects for them, one project for me, 10 projects for them, one project for me. And I kept doing, 10 for them, one for me, which is kind of like the movie studios had that same mentality, like, make 5 of these tentpole superhero projects and then do the one artsy drama movie, right, for yourself. So there's another similarity there. But over time, I just, continued to build and create and innovate. And other people started joining me because they liked the ideas, they liked the problems I was solving. And they saw my success rate and my execution rate was very high. They're like, this guy knows how to execute. So I want to join his team and help him on his next project. And that's where I am today.
All right, interesting. So how can entrepreneurs use storytelling both to attract investors and customers?
It's the foundation to everything, right? We've been telling stories by the fire thousands of years ago, and it's just how you put your kids to bed, right? Storytelling. So you're making someone believe something or make them feel connected to you in some way, and they relate to you. And that's really the key, right? Is how can you make someone relate to you or believe what you're saying is true? And it should be true, but how do you make them believe that? And telling a story is the best way. So that means using examples, using real world scenarios. That means showing, not telling, showing a pain point and how you solve it. And then, of course, the biggest piece is results. How do you take that story from here's the story I'm telling you to here's the result that you're going to get if you follow along the story? That's really the most important part.
It's in the ultimately what's in it for me, because everybody's
Yeah.
tuning into that station.
Yeah,
The
100%.
IIFM. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some common mistakes that first-time founders make when they're trying to bootstrap their businesses. At the beginning, we know that they are the marketing department, the sales departments, the production team, the HR, the janitorial team, all of that. What are some common mistakes that if founders really take to heart, they could have avoided?
I would say the number one mistake founders make, especially if they're first time founders, is building anything at all or too much of something before validating their concept. It just happens all the time. People think they have the best idea. They have the next Facebook. It's going to be worth $1 billion, but they don't understand the reality of what it takes to build a technology company. Hundreds of thousands of dollars, years of time. Marketing is very expensive these days. There's a disconnect there. So I always tell people, instead of building anything, go validate your concept. Ask people first what they think of it. Make some free surveys, post it online. Ask friends and family, ask non-friends and family, ask everybody you can what they think of your idea before building it. That's the first thing. The second thing, and I notice this happening all the time, and it drives me crazy sometimes, is when people believe that their gut or their opinions matter. They generally don't. And maybe your gut has served you well in the past. But if you look at what I've been teaching in my book, my course, my podcast, my own startups, everything I've ever done has always been with data-driven decisions. So I base every single thing on data. The market doesn't lie. The numbers don't lie. That's why I love them so much. Because if your customers are telling you something, 82% of them are telling you something, then that means that you're doing that right. If only 10% of your customers are saying this is right, then you're doing something wrong and you have to fix it. But then if you say, well, I think we should do that, and I think we should, and I want this, and I want that, that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you want and what you think. It matters what your customers want and what they think.
All right. So as you said that, I just heard, Jason, a lot of my listeners just screamed at you when you talk about the gut doesn't serve you. I mean, that's not an important factor. They're screaming, and I'm over here screaming to them like, hello. At what point, though, or is there any point that there is an overlap, an intersection, a crossover, a correlation with what you feel deep inside your gut, which is a spirit, which is that thing that speaks to you versus what the data says? Is there any point that they intersect or can intersect?
Very interesting way to ask that because there has to be some overlap, right? Your gut has
Mhm.
to, your instincts and gut, and what I really call them is more your experience. Because if you just say, my gut tells me that I have to make this app do these three things, and then you spend 6 months building it, $50,000 building it, and then you put it out there and nobody likes it, your gut served you very poorly.
Mhm.
So your gut doesn't work. And also, if you're chasing trends, so if say you built a tech platform and your first version is done and you have customers or you're trying to get customers, and all of a sudden you see in the market that this new thing is coming out that's related to your platform. And so you say to yourself, oh, my gut tells me I have to build this now. I have to build this or else I'm not going to be able to compete with the competitors. That's a completely incorrect way of thinking because now you're chasing that trend. You're chasing this new feature, this new idea, and your gut tells you to do that, but your gut is wrong. What does the data say? What does the market say? And when I ask that, I mean, how many of these competitors are building this thing that you're chasing? And the answer is going to be a lot. So you're chasing something that's already oversaturated. My question to you and to your listeners would be, what are they not chasing? What is the next thing behind that, after that, that you can now create a trend that you can get in front of and own it and own it. And then that's where your gut comes in, right? That's where your instincts come in. That's where your experience comes in. You say, I have this feeling that if I build this thing, not the one everyone's chasing, but this other one that no one's looking at, I have a feeling that that might be the best way to do it. Now, you followed your gut. All right, we just said it, right? We followed our guts, but you don't build anything. We go back to what I said earlier and you validate that first. You see how it's a cycle. It's always, you have to always follow the steps. And that's one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is they don't follow the steps. They believe they know everything. They believe that they know how to do everything. And every single time they fail over and over again until they learn the lesson.
Mhm. They don't follow the steps, and we talked about the trend, and nobody knows more than tech founders that the trends go out so quickly, right? So you're here building this wonderful platform that is going to solve the problem of healthcare, and you started and you iterate and you go on and you at least come up with your minimum viable products, and then you next thing you know is that there is this flurry of AI, that is now about to make what you've done obsolete, right? How do you, as a tech founder, know when to focus on something, when to put so much energy and effort into it, building something that lasts, that is, that's going to last, versus you just buying into a trend?
There is really no solid answer to this because
Not even your gut can help you there.
well, of course, I mean, AI can give me an answer. It's going to give me 100 answers, but I want to give you an answer from experience, right? And tell a story. And as an example, I don't like to follow trends. I like to be involved with them, if that makes sense. And the reason why I'm thinking about the answer a bit is because I don't follow trends. I don't chase trends. I try to be involved with them. So what I mean by that is I was using AI before ChatGPT was popular. Okay. That means I was involved with AI before I built an AI company. I was already using it. I was already leveraging the technology. And then all of a sudden ChatGPT comes out and there's this big explosion of AI. And now everyone's talking about AI. But if you look at my past and you look at what I've done, you'll realize that I was already using AI. So I'm not chasing the trend. I'm already in the trend. That's the best place to be. After iterating our startups, because we were doing, as you mentioned, Spinner, which was a video friendship app, it was a community app meant to bring people together during the loneliness epidemic of the pandemic. And we realized that it was a fantastic idea. People loved the app. It was really going well. But this is the sad truth that I have to tell people right now. And people, I hope they listen to this very carefully. Just because you build the best thing ever doesn't mean anyone's going to use it. Because if you don't have marketing dollars to back up your idea, you're not going to be able to compete with the Facebooks and TikToks of the world. You're just not going to be able to. Marketing is very expensive. Most investors want to see a consumer app with at least 1 million users, 1 million members, or $1 million in revenue, either one. If you get both, even better. If you don't have any of those numbers, they're not going to invest in your app. They're just not going to, unless you find, a rich friend or a friend of a friend, you have a connection. If you know somebody, you graduated from Stanford or you worked at Google and you know an investor, then they'll invest. But if not, you're not going to get any money. And that's 99% of the entrepreneurs out there. So we realized we had to move away from that, and we built AI in the app early on, and we started to transition from that app to our full-on B2B AI app, Vengo AI, because the data was telling us that the business owners wanted that, the ones that were on Spinner. They were like using our community app for business stuff, and they were using our AI, and they said, well, we want more. How do we build our own AI? It's stuck on the app. Well, we had to build a whole separate platform so that they could do so. Again, we were following customer feedback. It's what you always have to do.
Right. Customer feedback is also always important. Speaking of this, Jason, we're talking about, you were using AI before it became popular. Now, a lot of persons who are hearing about AI and may even be a little reticent about getting along with it and using it. What can you tell us about the evolution of AI? Because I remember when I just started my podcast in 2017, I brought on a guest talking about artificial intelligence and how to integrate it in your business and all of that. And it was such a foreign topic, even though, again, AI has been around so long, so much longer than we are, even making aware.
Yeah, I mean, it just goes back so far. I mean, AI's been around for decades. We even saw it on Jeopardy, IBM Watson beating contestants. I mean, that was AI. You're using the internet and you're using your smartphone. They all have AI. And I think that originally in the beginning of your statement, you mentioned people are reticent or they may be apprehensive or hesitating to use AI. And I would argue with everyone that by avoiding AI or not using AI, you're basically not using electricity. You're not using the internet. You're not using the automobile. You're not using a dishwasher. You're not using an airplane. And why do I say those things? Because each of those game-changing technologies fundamentally elevated humans to a whole new level. Electricity gave us power, and now we can power items. We had this, you can stop using candles. That was a huge thing. The internet, we were all so isolated, and now we're connected. Airplanes, instead of using a 4-month boat voyage, now you take a 2-hour flight and so every single technology that has come out has changed the world. But let's remember that every technology is just a tool that humans use to evolve. AI is just yet another tool for humans to use to evolve. That makes us more productive, more efficient, more creative. It helps us work better. It makes us better people in general too, because if you're using it for your personal life as a therapist or a health dietitian or, just advice or anything, it just helps you in so many ways. So anyone who's watching or listening and says, "Oh, I don't want to use AI because I'm afraid of it." Are you afraid of a hand drill? How are you going to fix your door? How, are you afraid of a light bulb? How are you going to light your room? I mean, don't be afraid of the tools, because that's all they are, is tools.
That's all they are. They're tools and to be leveraged. As we listen to the discussions surrounding AI, and particularly generative AI, right? One of the major concerns is that of ethics.
Mm.
So, how should founders keep in mind what considerations they should bear in mind when thinking about integrating AI into their products?
It's a really fantastic question because it comes up a lot when I talk to peers, coworkers, and the public.
Mm-hmm.
Ethics also, we have to consider security. I think they go hand in hand, to be honest. And as we see in the world right now in the news, the governments and organizations and companies of the world are not really supporting the ethical and security considerations with AI. They're just not. They're saying, well, if we stifle this, it's going to also stifle innovation. And we can't control how they do this, right? We can't. But as a founder, you can control how you implement it in your company. And with Vengo AI, what we've done is we've built from the ground up, always from the beginning, a high level of encryption and security parameters, and using cloud-based services like Azure, and every single possible function or level of encryption or piece that we're able to include that protects the data, encrypts the data, keeps everything away from, its competitors. So like, for example, if you're a dentist and you use our AI on your website, other dentists are not going to see your data. They're not going to see your leads. They're not going to see your conversations with customers because it's completely separate. It's completely encrypted. And, we have authentication tokens that log you out and expire. And there's just so many things you can do. So you have to definitely keep that in mind when you're building a startup, that everything should be completely safe and secure. When it comes to ethics, I mean, that really comes down to how you train your LLM and how you train your AIs and how you train your system to perform. And in our case, we keep it very sales lead oriented or very customer service oriented so that it only performs on this level of engagement with customers on different websites. We don't allow it to talk about philosophical things or, opinionated things or just generalized topics. It's very specific to the business owner. And that way, the business owner can have conversations with 200 clients in a day without wasting their time. And the AI will just send them the conversation summaries with all the leads so they can just book those meetings and close those sales and make more revenue. And that's really what we've built.
Yeah. Specificity in this regard is very important. Keep focused, then it's easier to stay on ethics, stay on an ethical path. All right, it is now time, Jason. I'm going to take a break right here and I'm going to bring in my community connection segment. And this is where our listeners, they share feedback. We have some feedback and stuff to share. But over the past couple of weeks, I have just been sharing something really exciting, what I'm excited about. And I know I'm piquing the interest of our peak performers. And that is the Leadership Cruise happening in November aboard Royal Caribbean's Liberty of the Seas. So we're having that event over 5 days and it's going to be transformational. There's networking, there's empowerment, there's fine dining, there's all of that jazz happening. You just think about, as we say in Jamaica, taking one stone and kill two birds, right? Where you get to go do some personal development, but you also get to unwind because usually, I know for entrepreneurs, busy people, business owners, leaders, you feel sometimes guilty when you're taking time away. But if you're taking time away for development, which is what we do often, and you're also going to get a lot of unwinding and all of that, then it's a perfect win, right? So win, 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 win for everybody involved. So I look forward to having you all sign up. Reach out to me at Heneka at HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. or via WhatsApp 876-849-2571 for more. So that's happening in November. And then closer up in October, you remember, some of you might remember, I used to host LeaderCast events before COVID put a dent in that. Guess what? Under my social enterprise, Grace to Grow, mentorship and training, I am bringing back LeaderCast. So that is happening in October. So if you want the details, just reach out to me and you get all of that. And that's what's happening in the Community Connection segment. This is where we get to connect face to face and just to, empower and encourage each other. So thank you. I look forward to seeing you at either event. All right, Jason, we are on the winding down now, and I'm going to ask you to just share your final thoughts, wrap your head around our main topic of conversation today, how to bootstrap a tech startup in the AI era. So let's just, bring that home, wrap around that as we close.
So I've been talking to a lot of people about this lately, not online really, just in person, maybe on Reddit sometimes. We live in a day and age where technology has changed dramatically. If you had asked me this question 20 years ago, I would have said it was really difficult to bootstrap a tech startup because you had to build everything on servers. The cloud really wasn't available yet. Coding was more difficult. There weren't as many, there was no YouTube, there was no tutorials. So how do you bootstrap something? Use everything at your disposal. There are tutorials, blogs, videos, everywhere available for you to learn how to do things. Build a minimum viable product, whatever it is, whether it's a physical product or a software product or a service. Meaning an MVP is something very, very simple. Build one thing, try to sell it to people, and if they like it and they buy it, then use the money to continue to grow. Don't build too much and expect people to use it, because you'll find they don't like that. They want just one core product, and then they'll tell you what features they want. So just do the process of features, iteration, feedback, features, iteration, feedback, and just keep doing that loop over and over again. That's how you bootstrap. You never do features, 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 then feedback, iteration. You do features, feedback, iteration in a loop. By doing this, you'll always be in bootstrap mode. You'll always be doing the right thing, and you won't be working off your gut, right? Which we talked about. The other thing is, and I notice this happening a lot, it's really difficult and challenging, is a lot of people say, okay, so I built this product. It took me 6 months to build, but I can't get anyone to use it. How do I get sales and marketing? How do I do that? And I'm going to tell you right now, it is very challenging and very difficult to do, because you're competing with other people. If you don't have a large budget, you can't run ads. So I'll say the easier way to do it, and when I say easier, I mean the more cost-effective way to do it, is to become a knowledge thought leader in your industry. So that means writing regular blog posts, creating videos of yourself talking about these topics, posting them online, going into groups and subreddits and Facebook groups, et cetera, of these topics, and talking to people, commenting on them. If they need help, then say, oh, well, by the way, my product can help you with that, or my service can help you with that, or hire me and I'll help you with your thing. So there's ways around it, and it's a grind. I mean, it's a lot of work, right? And that's the thing. Most people don't want to do the work. They want to just throw money at something, and they think that that's going to solve the problem. And more often than not, it doesn't. Hard work does. Hard work will always beat money. It just will. Now, that being said, without money, it makes it a lot harder. So if you're trying to raise money for your idea, you need to show traction. You need to show revenue. Your team and your technology all have to be really good. And even then, it's hard to raise money in this climate, because the pandemic really messed a lot of things up. So you have to really shine above everybody else. You have to be as far along as you possibly can. So bootstrapping to scaling, put in the work, man. You gotta put in the work, and it's not going to be a couple months. It's going to probably take you a year or longer.
Yes, but I love the loop that you shared: features, iteration, feedback. That loop, I
Yep.
think it's a major takeaway. How might our community of peak performers get in touch with you, Jason?
The easiest way would be to go to my website, which is jasonsherman.org, which you can talk to my AI on there, from Vengo, of course, and you can find all the links to my podcast, book, course. And I would say try Vengo AI. It's free trial. If you try it out, go to vengoai.com. I'm also giving out a free AI gold guide, by going to vengoai.com and talk to our AI, Vanessa. She's on there. Just tell her you want a copy of the AI Gold Guide, and she'll ask you for your information, and we'll send it off to you.
Ah, interesting. I like that. Thank you so much for coming on the Entrepreneurial You and having such a really interesting conversation with me. It was insightful, informative, and lighthearted. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And so now I go into the Trending Now segment. The global AI market is projected to reach 401 billion by 2028, yet 90% of startups fail within their first 2 years due to poor planning and lack of resources. Founders who bootstrap successfully retain 3 times more equity than those who rely on venture capital funding. Of course, Jason's insight into ethical AI innovation and lean startup strategies couldn't be more timely. And the main one for me is when you're doing that product, right? Your minimum viable products, you're creating that. You want to make sure you have your minimum viable products. Work on this loop, the features, the iteration, and the feedback, and keep that going. And that's how you're going to improve and win at this game. Good stuff. That's what's trending now. Of course, we've already said thanks to Jason. Now it's time to thank you, our community of peak performers, for listening. Of course, if you want to dive more into Jason's work and and learn from his book about Strap on Your Boots, visit jasonsherman.org or follow him on social, Jason Sherman. That's at Jason Sherman. If this episode inspired you, subscribe to the Entrepreneurial You, leave a rate and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify, and share this episode with someone who dreams of launching their own startup. Remember, success doesn't require millions in funding. It starts with bold ideas and relentless execution, and that stick-to-itiveness, that's what it really requires. I just want to thank you so much again for sticking with me and putting up with me with I am resisting a cold, so you hear my voice. It's I'm sure it's different from what it normally sounds like. But you stuck with me through this episode as we push through together. And that's what we do as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as leaders. I finally ask you to affirm with me. I am an innovative entrepreneur who turns challenges into opportunities. I repeat, I am an innovative entrepreneur who turns challenges into opportunities. Do take care. Thanks so much to our sponsors, the Jamaica Stock Exchange, and of course, HenekaWatkis-Porter.com. What good?
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.